tell us more about the differences between food safety standards here in the US and in the EU.
The main difference between the US and Europe is in how food is raised. There's a much more industrial style food production here. So that means animals that are fed all sorts of antibiotics. There's hormones. Europe doesn't allow any use of drugs for growth promotion purposes. It's considered unethical to give a drug to an animal except to treat disease. Here, the vast majority of antibiotics that are given to animals are for growth promotion and what's called disease prevention.
You're eating chicken, and I've got a beef hot dog. What kind of risks are US consumers running when they consume just typical US food?
Well, with typical US food that's industrially raised like this, one of the big problems is the use of antibiotics, and that leads to antibiotic-resistant bacteria. You're looking at a potential nightmare where no antibiotics. You could get a simple infection and no antibiotic would treat it.
Would you say over the years that you've been following the situation, have there been improvements?
If I take over the long term, there's been this drastic expansion in GMOs, and they were sold to us as, oh, we'll be able to produce more nutritious crops and we'll be able to feed people. And when you look at it, 30 years later, there is no increase in yield that is due to GMOs. They don't make food more nutritious. They basically enable us to use a lot more pesticides, glyphosate. So 94% of all the soybeans in the US are glyphosate tolerant. 89% of the corn has glyphosate tolerance. So all it is these GMOs are just a way to sell a lot more pesticides, and in particular glyphosate.
Back in 2011, Barack Obama passed the Food Safety and Modernization Act. What's the future for food safety under the Trump administration?
Any sort of forward movement that there was on food safety looks like it's going to stall, because who the Trump administration is putting into place to be heads of agencies, and where they're getting those people is from the industry that was regulated.
So the priority here in the US is what? It's consumer safety, or it's the safety of big businesses?
Particularly under the Trump administration, it's more the interests of the large corporations and not the safety of consumers. It was a little bit better under Obama, but that was only because he was being pushed. But on areas like trying to reduce the level of antibiotics, there have been bills put into Congress literally for the last 15 years, and there's just no movement because the power of the ag industry is so large. That's why in Europe, your organic label comes from basically small farms, animals that have just eaten this. So that means something. In this country, particularly in the meat area, the organic label, you can still use all these bad practices.
Michael Hansen of Consumer Reports, thanks so much for
Thank you.
all your insights.